Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our leadership seminar. Today we have Shin, and I think she's going to be able to give you a lot of insight into many of the things that we are emphasizing here at the college. We want every one of you guys, students especially, to understand what it takes to make decisions. And I think she'll be able to give you great insight on that. And for all of you other alumni and guests that are here, we're always happy for you to come and join us and enjoy the things that we have to present you. Anyway, I'm going to turn this over to Adam and Ellie, and we'll get the show on the road. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ellie. I'm here with Adam. So we'd like to welcome everyone to the Leadership Seminar Series of April presented by the Hayashida family. We've got a great speaker today. Adam will start off by introducing her, Shin.
All right. So Shin was named the president and general manager of Hawaiian Telecom in February 2020. The first female president in the company's more than 135-year history. She's responsible for the overall leadership and management of Hawaiian Telecom's operations and corporate staff. Sue previously served as chief of staff, providing strategic counsel to Hawaiian Telecom's president and senior leadership team, and also managing key and directing key projects and initiatives. Prior to that, the executive of marketing and communications, responsible for all marketing execution and communications functions. She graduated from McKinley High School before receiving her bachelor's degree from the University of La Verne in California. Committed to giving back to the community, Sue currently serves on Aloha United Way's board of directors, McKinley High School Foundation, and the advisory council for the University of Hawaii at Manoa Outreach College. And she also serves as a member of the Chamber of Commerce's Hawaii's Military Affairs Council, the Hawaii Business Roundtable, and Hawaii's Green Growth Sustainability Business Forum. So now we'll have Sue begin with any opening remarks she'd like to share.
Hi. It's 11. My day's a blur because I had to get up at 2 a.m. to get on a conference call with my colleagues on the mainland. Thank you for having me. I'm really pleased to be here. I have to tell you guys that are on Zoom, you guys are missing out on some really good pizza in the room. But thank you again for having me. I didn't prepare a ton of slides or anything because as I thought about what I wanted to share, I really wanted to kind of open it up and answer questions, really make it more meaningful for the people attending. So I think, you guys did a great job of introducing me. What I'll say is that I took a fairly non-traditional path to get to my role currently. And I am obviously really open to talking about that and answering questions about that. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just talk about a little bit of my kind of path and how I think I got to where I am, because it is a little bit of a head scratcher. I don't think when you introduced me, you mentioned what I got my degree in. I'm actually a journalism major. So I got my degree in journalism. I think the reason why that translated for me throughout my career is because journalists are inquisitive by nature, right? They are constantly trying to figure things out, right? Understand why. And I think that inherently really describes who I am as a person. And so that has helped me throughout my career. So I started off, right? I graduated from college. I came home. We had a conversation earlier. I had a convo with someone. And I said, I think kids from Hawaii fall into kind of two camps. They go away to the mainland and they go, oh my gosh, this whole world is out here. And they sort of never come back. And then the people like me who go away and go, you know what? Hawaii is the best place on earth. And so that's the camp that I fell into. And so after I graduated, I knew I wanted to come home. Of course, I was a journalist, or I wanted to be one. Very few jobs in journalism in the state of Hawaii, right? At the time, we had 2 daily papers and we had 3 television news operations, and that was it. But I wanted to be home, so I came home, sent my tape around, got no job offers, and decided that I just need to get my foot in the door. So I took a job as a sales assistant. It's basically like the lowest job on the totem pole you can get at a TV station at KHNL. And this is when, and you guys are so young, I'm looking around the room. This is when KHNL was the Fox affiliate. This is before all of that switch occurred. And so KHNL was a Fox affiliate. At the time, Fox was a fledgling network. So it did not require its local affiliates to have a news operation. So it did not have a news department. But I thought, you know, at least it's in the TV industry. I needed a job. So I just took that job as a sales assistant, spent all day doing nothing but computer data entry. So people bought commercials at KHNL and I would just input those commercials. And that was my job. And I hated it. I hated the moment of it. It was awful. But you know, in life, sometimes this meeting is being recorded. Okay. Sometimes these decisions kind of take you on these different paths. And so that was a great decision for me, looking back on it, because I did get my foot in the door. And a couple of years later, the Fox and NBC affiliations swapped. So KHNL became overnight, it became the NBC affiliate. And KHON, which was the Fox affiliate, became, which was the NBC affiliate, became the Fox affiliate. So all of a sudden, KHNL, where I was required to have a news operation. So they very quickly, you know, put together a news operation, and I was at the right place at the right time. So I put my name in the, you know, in the ring, and I said, you know, I'm interested. I have this degree, and got my foot in to the door in the news department, on the assignment desk. Again, at the very, very bottom of the line. Worked really hard, came in when I was off to, you know, work on stories, had terrific mentors. I got a set of questions from you guys. They were terrific. And there were questions about mentorship. If you guys walk out of this session remembering kind of one thing, what I'd say is that it's really, really important for you to find your people. And what I mean by that is whether it's mentors or mentees, people that are going to challenge you, make you better, whether it's in your personal life or in, you know, academia or in your professional life later, it's incredibly important. And I found that in the news department with, you know, people that really had no reason to be as kind as they were, but took me under their wing and let me shadow them, right? And, you know, eventually I worked my way up and ended up becoming a reporter. But apparently I met Song. I don't know if I interviewed you or what, but he remembers me as a reporter. So I hope I was nice and fair. But what ended up happening at that point was I got married and I started to have a family, and I sort of faced a crossroads at that point. I had to make a decision around whether or not I wanted to continue to be sent into hurricanes rather than away from them. And that was really the moment. There was a hurricane, and I joke around about it, but there was a hurricane headed to Hilo. And this was, I think, the year 2000. My daughter was born. She was still an infant. I think I took 3 months off, you know, to be with her. And so she was still, you know, very young. And the station said, pack your bag and you need to fly into Hilo. There's a hurricane headed to Hilo. So, of course, my initial reaction was, of course, it's my job. I'm going to do it. And then I thought, what? Doing? You are flying away from your infant daughter. And we all know what happened during Iniki. Well, we all don't know, but some of us remember what happened during Iniki, right? When hurricanes hit head on, you know, airports shut down, right? You don't, you know, aside from very critical, you know, National Guard type folks, military that are bringing supplies in, you know, they shut commercial travel down, right? For obvious reasons. And so I was staring at the possibility of not just being away from my daughter for a night or two. It was, you know, potentially a prolonged period, right? Fortunately, the hurricane didn't hit. But it was a moment where I found myself sort of reevaluating my priorities. And you guys are young, but for those of us who are a little older, remember Connie Chung? That was my goal, right, in life. I wanted to be the next Connie Chung. I was going to change the world, right? But it was really in that moment that I thought, you know, can I still make a difference doing something else? And that's when I transitioned into public relations. And when you're a reporter, you think you know everything there is to know about being a PR person, because you see them at press conferences and go, I can do that. I can write a press release and, you know, talk in front of the camera. But, you know, what you realize very quickly is it's like the iceberg, right? You just see the tip of it. There is much more under the surface. And I actually really fell in love with the stuff that's under the surface, right? Which is, you know, the strategic thinking, really the thinking about who your audience is, and how you can communicate with them in really impactful ways. And I think that really those skill sets are what has really translated for me as a leader. Because, and I bet I can ask this question in this room and I'll get the answer. Like, what is the one thing that people say is a very important skill set to have as a leader? They have to be good at what? Yeah.
Communications.
Yeah, right. You have to be a good communicator. You have to be able to, in order to lead, right? You have to be able to bring people along. They have to be able to see your vision, right? Because you can be the smartest person in the room. You can have the best vision in the room, but if you can't articulate it, and if you can't motivate the people in the room to come along with you, you're not going to be successful as a leader. Because the higher up you go in an organization, candidly, the less actual work you're doing, right? Because that's why you have a team. And you have a team. And that's why someone like me, who's a journalism major, right, has no technical background, can be the president of Hawaiian Telecom. Because I have incredibly capable, right, incredibly smart people that work for me that have the skill sets that we need to execute. And so, you know, in kind of in a nutshell, that's really sort of what led me to this role. The things that I think I learned along the way that helped prepare me for this role. You know, I can explain my roles within Hawaiian Telecom that actually landed me here, but I do want to pause because, you know, I don't want to just drone on, and I'd rather this be more interactive. And so if folks have questions or if they want me to touch on different aspects of my life a little bit more, I'm happy to do that. So how do you guys want to?
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, yeah. So we'll move on to the Q&A portion now. So we'll be asking you some questions, and audience, if you guys have any questions, either on Zoom or in person, just let us know.
Yeah.
So I'll start you off.
Great.
We understand that your path from childhood has its share of challenges and opportunities. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your upbringing and how that kind of shaped you to who you are today?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. So I will share with you guys my background, because I think that the second half of her question, which is around how it shapes me, it shaped me tremendously. I think certainly as a person, but for sure as a leader. So this was 1970, late 70s. My father was 34 years old, and we were living in South Korea at the time. And I always tell people this because I think it's important, especially for the younger folks, to know. Today, when people think of Korea, they think of K-pop, right? And prosperity and technology and all of these really wonderful things. In the late 70s, it was not that. You know, I would argue that Korea at the time was struggling economically. It was maybe not third world, but pretty close to it. So the dramatic shift that Korea has made in a very short period of time is pretty remarkable. But I need to level set on that because I don't want the younger people in the audience to think she was in Korea. Like, what is she? it's, modern society. It was absolutely not that at the time. So my father's 34 years old. We're living there. I have an older brother. I'm about 5. He's around 8. And he goes to sleep one day and he just doesn't wake up. 34, right? So it's just, a complete and utter shock to my mom. And at the time, again, the reason I explained sort of the economic climate is at the time in Korea, only the wealthy could educate their children because there wasn't this real concept of a public education system. So you had to pay to send your kids to school. So, in my mom's family, she had, I think, 11 siblings. You educate your boys first. And then if you have money left over, which with 11 kids, you're not going to have money left over, maybe you educate your daughters, right? So my mom was very uneducated. And so she all of a sudden is left with these 2 very young kids. She has no way of making any money, right? She was a housewife. And so she was kind of stuck. And these are those moments in your life, right? I obviously had no decision-making ability at this point in my life, but it shaped my life. She had a sister who was living in Hawaii at the time. And the immigration laws also have evolved over the years. Back then, in order to immigrate to the US, you had to have a sponsor. And so my mom's sister, my aunt and uncle sponsored us, and we moved to Hawaii in 1977. My aunt and uncle, my uncle in particular, had different jobs with the Department of Defense. So they moved to lots of places in the country. So I always say that I was really fortunate that they happened to be in Hawaii at the time, because we could have ended up in Colorado, we could have ended up in Arizona, they lived in. So my family moved to Hawaii and moved to the US. Really, it's kind of a bit of a cliche kind of immigrant story, but it was really all about, for my mom, the ability for her to educate her children. Because she basically looked at the landscape and figured out very quickly that her ability to really educate her children was very limited in Korea. So she made, to me, what was an incredibly brave decision to leave her entire family, right? She had only one sister here. She obviously didn't speak the language. And she picked us up and moved us here. I was 5. And so for me, hi, welcome. Come in. I think the transition was much easier for me, both from a language perspective as well as, just culturally. And honestly, I don't remember a lot about that period in my life because I was so young. My brother had it much harder, right? Because he was 8. So one, he remembered my father. So I think for me, because I don't quite remember him, I don't quite feel that sense of loss, right? But for my brother, he absolutely felt that. And so, my mom was a single mom and she was dealing with all the things a single mom would deal with, but layered on top of that was, right, how does she make a living and support her kids, and right, how does she help my brother transition culturally and otherwise into this new environment, but also into this world where, he no longer has his father, right? So this is why I talk about my mom a lot, because I feel like my story is actually her story. But she made those sacrifices because she knew that if she brought us here, that we would have the ability to be educated, right? And so I really believe in the power of public education because of that. Because I do think that still, despite some of the challenges that we continue to face in this country, I still believe that the United States, we hold so much promise, right? And sort of our core values as a country, I think, are still something that we should celebrate. But that, I share that story, and I have to to be honest, when I was growing up, candidly, I was pretty embarrassed about my background, right? And so because we were obviously very poor, my mom was on welfare and food stamps, and I was always the kid with the free lunch thing. It was always very embarrassing for me. I remember growing up, right? And I didn't like when, my mom spoke Korean, and I wanted to be the same as all the other kids, right? It took me a long time in my life to get to a point where I can talk about these things, because I think it's incredibly powerful. And it's important for people like me to share these stories, because I'm sure that whether it's on this call or somewhere else, there are so many kids that are going through similar experiences. And we talked about this a little bit ago. I think the immigrant population in the state of Hawaii has changed demographically. So I think we're probably seeing more like Micronesian immigrants. We still see immigrants from Asia, but I don't know that it's quite at the level that it was back then, because again, the economies in those countries have improved so much. But I think the immigrant experience is still very, very similar, right? I think families, parents are wanting better things for their kids. That's why they're making those decisions, sacrificing to come here. I think the kids just want to assimilate. And so, I think it's important for me to share the story, because if I can just give one person that sense of hope, right, that it 100% is possible to not just, move to this country and become educated, but really to thrive and then to give back. That's sort of why I share the story that I share. And obviously it has had a tremendous impact on me and my life. And certainly as a leader, I think that I'm a more empathetic leader because of my background. I think I'm a more selfless leader because of my background. And maybe I shouldn't say my background, because of my mom, right? And the way my mom raised me. As poor as we were, I will say that I have very distinct memories of my mom through church, finding out about someone who's not, maybe they're down and out. And so they would live with us for months at a time. She didn't have much to give, obviously, but in her mind, she had something to give that person needed at the time. So, that really shaped my view of the world, really, and my place in it, right? And that sense of responsibility that I feel like I have. So yeah, that's how I think that my background shaped me and also shaped me as a leader.
Your mother sounds like a really
She's awesome. She's really amazing. So my mom lives with us now, which is really awesome. So she did end up getting remarried when I was in college, to a great person. And then when he passed, we, decided to move her in with us. And candidly, it's a little bit embarrassing, and these songs Korean. So we have this immediate connection, as all Korean mothers will do. Supposedly we moved her in to take care of her, but embarrassingly, she's taking care of us, in more ways than I care to admit. But yeah, we're really, really lucky. And my girls have a really close relationship with my mom because of it. And so I feel like we were really fortunate to have that. Yeah.
It was really amazing to hear about your story about immigrating to here, because growing up, a lot of my friends too, like the community I grew up in, a lot of them were also immigrants, and it's not uncommon for people to have to take care of each other as they're growing up. So it's really nice to hear about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like your mom really had like a very, very big impact on your life.
And she does to this day, right? She keeps me grounded for sure. My husband will sometimes say to my mom, she's the president of the company, right? My mom told me about something, right? Will forever be my mom. And so, she keeps me grounded for sure. Yep.
Are there any other individuals along the way that really impacted your life, and can you tell us a bit more about how they kind of changed your life in your either professional or personal?
Yeah, happy to, but I saw a hand go up.
Sorry, I just have a dollar question.
Yeah.
So I think the story is so impactful, and I find it interesting how people can be so different and take the same types of adverse experiences and do different things with
Yeah.
those. So, and I'm sure even just looking at your mom, you, your brother, you probably all
Yeah.
internalize and process those experiences in different ways.
Yeah.
So how would you recommend, or what advice do you have for those that might have similar circumstances to be able to flourish and thrive and process it in a positive, move in a positive direction?
Yeah, you know, maybe what I'll do is I'll share kind of, because the way that I approached it, but I want to be really clear in saying that I don't think there's a silver bullet. Like, I think if I were to stand up here and say, oh, well, just do X, Y, and Z and you'll be fine. I think that really does a disservice to the circumstances that an individual can find themselves in. While we were incredibly poor and obviously in a challenging situation, as I shared with you guys, I had a mother who was, I think determined is like such not the best word, but that's the best word I can think of. Like she put us first in every aspect of her decision making, right? And I think that did so much to creating an environment for us where we were protected and had opportunities in ways that I think, you know, if you don't have that kind of parental support, it's going to be really tough. And whether you're poor or rich or whatever, I would argue that parental support is so incredibly important. So I don't, you know, that's why I'm hesitating in answering that, right?
Yeah.
For me, though, one, it was obviously my mom, and she just having incredibly high standards around just kind of how we behaved as people, right? So there was that. And I think for me, I watched her and you know, I shared a little bit ago that my brother had a harder time than I did. So it's interesting that you asked that question, right? Because my brother and I have the same parents, right? And my brother is very successful. He's doing fine. He chose a different path though, right? He rebelled a bit. He didn't go to college. And to be honest, you know, between the two of us, he's the smarter one, right? Just, you know, he would always score through the roof in standardized tests and things like that, right? So just naturally more gifted, I think, than I am. What I had though, that I think, you know, that he struggled with, and again, his circumstance was very different. He remembered my father. I really didn't. So I didn't feel that sense of loss that I think he always felt in his life. But I worked my butt off. Regardless of what the situation was, I was the last one there. I was the first one there and the last one to leave. I have to understand something, right? Like it's just that inherent, I talked about that curiosity, that journalistic curiosity. So some of it is that, but some of it is, and maybe it's the competitiveness. I don't know, it's the Korean thing too, maybe, right? Like there's a little bit of that internal competition, right? Like, and for me, as I watched my brother struggle and I watched my mom struggle, for me, what drove me is the desire to be able to make things easier for my mom, right? And you know, Korean moms are also notorious for this, which I don't love. They love bragging about their kids. And maybe it's not just a Korean mom thing, right? I think a lot of moms do that. And and not only bragging about their kids, but bragging about things, right? And my mom didn't have the things that everyone else had. And so candidly, part of what drove me too was I wanted her to be able to brag about something, right? So that's kind of silly, but for me, it was really around just staying focused on what our core values were. And, you know, just continue to focus on that. I mean, I don't think there's an answer. I really don't. And, you know, I feel like I was very, very lucky to be in the situation I was in, to have the kind of mom I had, 100%. Yeah, thanks. So you asked about mentors throughout my life. Yeah. So, and I mentioned it earlier, you have to find your people, right? So I've had mentors throughout my life. So when I was at KHNL, she's on Lee Cataluna. She is, I think, a Civil Bee columnist now. At the time, she was an anchor and a reporter at KHNL. I remember very vividly a conversation I had with her. And she said, you have to stop being so local. And I'm like, what does that mean? And what she meant was, because there was another colleague of ours who got a reporter job, a full-time reporter job before I did. And she didn't think that that was right. And she said the reason for that was because I was being too local, meaning I was being too deferential. I was being too humble. And there's a balance. And I think that is a struggle for, I think one, it's a struggle for women, candidly. It's definitely something that I think women struggle with a little bit more than men. But also the sort of local Asian culture is one where, right, you don't stick out in good ways or bad ways, right? And I think there's a balance there. And throughout my life and career, I've had to find that balance. And candidly, I struggle with it today. I still struggle with it because it's hard to undo so many years, right? From your parents to your community, right? Saying, hey, you gotta right? You have to be humble, right? Don't brag, right? Don't do that. But I think that in Hawaii, there is a way to do it with aloha, right? With humility. And I remember hearing this and it really resonated with me. And really just humility isn't thinking of yourself less, right? And I think it's so important that when we think about ourselves, it's not, you don't need to put yourself down, right? It's that you think of others first, right? You put others before yourself. And if you do that, I don't think you're ever going to come across as being egotistical, right? And that humility will always be there. And the humility in decision-making, especially as a leader, is super important, right? Because am I making this decision for the right reasons? Is it for the greater good? Or is it because of something that I'm passionate about or something I believe? And I think that for whatever reason, because of my title, that's more important, right? So I think that's really, really important. So Lee was really, at that point in my life, was an important mentor. Mentors for me have evolved over time. Joan Bennett, when I got into the PR world, was an important mentor of mine. She really is, I still say this, and I believe it still, is she's one of the most strategic thinkers in kind of that PR space that I ever met. And so she taught me that world. When I came to Hawaiian Telecom, John Komeiji, who was my predecessor, what he actually really taught me was, because he's an attorney by background and training. So like me, he doesn't have a technical background. But he rose to becoming the president of Hawaiian Telecom as well. And so as I continued to say to him, no, I'm not ready. No, I'm not the right person for this job. What he was saying to me is, well, on paper, neither am I, right? And so what he taught me the value of is the importance of being able to bring your people along, right? So corporate culture, employee engagement, these things that I think companies struggle with all the time. Organizations struggle with all the time. There are no easy answers to it, but the amount of focus and attention that we place on it, I think, really goes back to that kind of core value, these core values, right? But John was a very important mentor of mine. And in fact, he believed in me in ways that I didn't believe in myself, right? And he also challenged me and pushed me in ways that were uncomfortable, right? So I said it earlier, mentors and your people are not, don't surround yourself with people that agree with you all the time. And if you find yourself in that situation, and for me, I remember when I first took this role, someone said to me, it's really lonely at the top. So you have to figure out like who your people are and people you can trust. And it's very true, but even as you kind of progress in your life and your career, be careful, because if you're the boss, people are gonna probably agree with you, right? Find alternative viewpoints, right? And often that means finding them outside of your organization, right? And especially for me. So John continues to be a really strong mentor of mine. So yeah, mentorship is really, seeking out mentorship is really, really important.
How would you recommend that
People
students
do
here?
that?
Yeah.
You just have to put yourself out there. So I think this pandemic period, which feels like we're generally kind of out of, right? Was incredibly difficult. And I took on this role in February of 2020. Took on this role in February of 2020, and then a month later, we told all of our employees, or 1,100 employees, pack up your things. You're gonna go work from home for 2 weeks. Longest 2 weeks of our lives. We still joke about it in our executive team. It's been the longest 2 weeks of our lives, right? So in that kind of pandemic environment, I think is really challenging. But right, so, you know, I'm sure there's reasons why the people on the Zoom chose to join in Zoom, but I will tell you, take advantage of the opportunities to interact with people, with potential mentors in in-person environments as they become more and more available. It's really easy to sit in the comfort of your living room or your bedroom or whatever, but you have to put yourself out there. And mentor-mentee relationships are like any relationship. Romantic, professional, personal, you get what you put into it, right? And so don't be afraid to put yourself out there, right? And take advantage of those opportunities. And the other thing I'll say with a mentor-mentee relationship is like a lot of other relationships. You're going to click with some people and you're not really going to click with them. It's just kind of human nature, right? Just like, right, you don't meet and automatically like everyone you meet. Yeah, same thing. And so take the time to, right, meet a lot of people, right? You're gonna have to kiss a lot of frogs before you get the prince, right? Do that. But if you don't put yourself out there, you're never gonna be able to find the prince, right? So that's what I'd say. There's no simple easy answers. Just get yourself out there.
So you started talking a little bit about your position at Hawaiian Telecom.
Mhm.
Do you mind elaborating more about that, and then maybe a little bit
Yeah.
about how you got there? and
Sure.
Some things you want to share about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I talked about kind of the early part of my career. I was in PR and I was working with Joan Bennett, working in the agency world. And the agency world is pretty hectic, right? Because you have many clients, but yet all your clients have to feel like they're your only client. So it's long hours, but the way that my career progressed, I'm really fortunate that it progressed in that way, because you end up learning a lot about PR, right? You learn a lot about different industries. And I learned that I wanted to be able to be a specialist. So I wanted to dive deep into an organization, really understand their challenges, really be a part of the team. Because I felt like that's how I was going to be able to serve the company best, right? So I transitioned to Board of Water Supply initially, and then funny, when you get to a certain point in your career, what you'll find is you stop having to apply for jobs, right? Because what ends up happening is you work with people and then you build really strong, trusted working relationships. And as those people move to different places, they're looking for trusted partners, right? And so I ended up moving to a couple of different places and getting recruited by folks that I had worked with in the past. So what happened with Hawaiian Telecom in 2013, so I'm going to be celebrating my 10-year anniversary at Hawaiian Telecom here soon, is that in 2013, the person who was the head of corporate communications at Hawaiian Telecom announced that he was going to leave. And so John Komeji and I had known each other, interacted when he was an attorney, and I was at the Board of Water Supply. He was one of our attorneys at the Board of Water Supply, outside counsel. And so he talked to a bunch of folks and they recommended me. So he reached out to me and asked if I would be interested in taking on this role. And so I did, and I started off just with corporate communications, and then over time, which is what ends up happening, we always joke around about what you get for doing good work in organizations is usually more work. So I started off with just corporate communications, and then over time pulled marketing into corporate communications as well, because I have this very strong belief that marketing and corporate communications PR are really kind of, very related and should be completely integrated. So as you think about your marketing strategy, it has to have PR components to it, including employee engagement and relations, right? And community engagement relations as well. And so we did that at the time. And by taking on marketing, that's how I really got to learn about the business side of the business. Because in Corp Com, you tend to, at the time anyway, we tended to get brought in on, certainly the bigger projects, certainly some of the crisis type issues, but you're not fully engaged in the day-to-day BAU business side of the operations, right? And so as I got marketing, I really started to learn about the business side. And so my business acumen then started to really grow. And like I said earlier, just a ton of asking questions and candidly not being afraid to look dumb sometimes. That's so important. Because I think that sometimes when people take on roles and they have certain titles, they automatically assume that with that title, you should instantly know these things. I didn't instantly know these things. And so I would walk into a room and say, guys, I took on this role very recently. And actually, what I found is that it gave me license to challenge and ask questions and bring a fresh perspective, right? In ways that maybe the people that have been doing it for a long time were a little bit stuck in the way they've been doing it. And so I could say, but why do we do that? Why today in 2015, not why in 1990 when we probably first started doing it now, right? So I think that's what it really is. And for me, I talked about it earlier about being a strong communicator and really candidly, really caring about what it is we're doing, right? So every single month we do a new hire orientation, and that is the one meeting I never miss. Because I think it's incredibly important as we onboard our new team members of our family really, that I articulate for them what our vision is, why I believe and why I want them to also believe that what we're doing is more than just delivering internet, phone, and TV service. That what we're doing is really laying the foundation for economic development, opportunity, job growth in the state of Hawaii with our fiber investment. Like, they gotta believe that. Otherwise, if they're just coming to work and it's just collecting a paycheck, I think that's where you see employee churn. And so those are the types of things I think as my career has evolved at Hawaiian Telecom that sort of led me to where I am. The job that I took after that, though, John Komeji, when he became president, pulled me up into a chief of staff role. And that's really where I kind of cut my teeth. When I took the job, and I share this very widely, when I took the job, I said, look, you have to give me at least 5 years. He broke his promise, by the way. He left before 5 years, but I took that job not because I wanted to be the next president of Hawaiian Telecom. And I tell people I never aspired to be the president of Hawaiian Telecom. I always aspired to actually just do my job really well and bring value to the organization, right? But him bringing me up into that chief of staff role is really what got me then even deeper, right, into the operations side then of the business, right? Marketing brought me into sort of the financial and the business side, and then the chief of staff role then pulled me into like all of it, right? So field operations, right, network operations, and again, I'm not technical, and so I can't walk into our network operations center and even begin to tell you, right, what it is these guys are looking at on their monitors, or fix it. God forbid me trying to fix something that's wrong. But I have an incredibly capable team. And as a leader, I always, pride myself in surrounding myself with people smarter than me, and in really recognizing talent and recognizing people that are maybe diamonds in the rough, regardless of what their background is. And maybe that's because of how I evolved in the organization. So,
Yeah, no, it
does
has
your question justice?
Yeah, I was wondering, you mentioned that you never came from a technical background,
Yeah.
but how Don didn't either. Was that ever something intimidating to you coming to work for Hawaiian Telecom?
100%. So when I came to work at Hawaiian Telecom, I don't know that I was intimidated by not being technical at that point, because my role was very limited to corporate communications. And at that point in my career, I was very confident in my abilities in space, right? But certainly as they said, here, take on marketing. I said, I've done marketing before. What? And then of course with chief of staff, and then certainly with president. Absolutely. And how people talk about imposter syndrome? 100%, right? Like it is, there are, to this day, right? And I think that if leaders stand in front of a group like this and they say, oh no, I never doubt myself, and I always feel like I have all the right decisions, I would say that's probably not the truth. I'm not going to do that. I'm very authentic in my leadership style. I had lots and lots of moments. In fact, I had lots of conversations with John, even before I sort of officially said okay, where I said, "You are crazy. This is not going to work. I think that this decision could really do the organization disservice." And tried to talk him out of it a lot. Tried to talk a lot of people out of it a lot. And so that doubt absolutely is there. What really helped me get through it is really, candidly, is not only John, but other colleagues and other mentors who believed in me in ways, again, I said it earlier, that I didn't really quite believe in myself. And could point to different successes that I had achieved, in very difficult and challenging circumstances, where I finally just told myself I had to give it a shot, right? But yeah, that self-doubt is very real, very real. And you just got through it, right? And the way you get past it is you have challenging situations, and then when you work through it and you get on the other end of it, if you can learn things from it, and right, then you're better off.
Was there like a specific moment that happened for you?
It was like a light switch, and all of a sudden I was like, I'm good, I got this.
Yeah.
No, really, and, you know, some days are better than others, right? In life, at work, at school. There are some days where at the end of the day, I go, man, I feel really good about what we did today, right? We made progress, you know, we made these decisions, we're moving ahead. Other days, I feel like we take steps backwards, right? And then that's when the self-doubt comes into play, right? What could I have done better as a leader? How could I have led the team in a different way? But I also believe everything happens for a reason. Do you guys watch Ted Lasso? How many of you guys watched Ted Lasso? Anybody?
I've heard a lot.
Oh my
Well,
goodness. All
sorry.
right, so I really recommend you guys watch Ted Lasso. It sounds ridiculous, but my husband made me watch it during the pandemic. And maybe it was because of, right, I had just taken on this new role. I really didn't feel like I was qualified or ready. We shut down for the pandemic, and I don't get to do the things candidly that are my strengths, right? Which is this, right? Which is really interacting with people, bringing teams along, right? It's really hard to do it in WebEx. Like it really is, because as much as we try not to, everybody's multitasking, right? It's really tough. And so he said, you got to watch this show. It's so positive. The reason I bring it up is it's about an American football coach who gets recruited to London to coach their football, so soccer, a professional team. And then hilarity ensues, but also there are so many sort of like leadership things in there. And it's really around him as a coach. And there are things in there like at the very beginning, right? Everyone thinks obviously he's completely unqualified. Everyone, they call him a wanker. And it's like this chant, right? He doesn't even know what it means in the beginning, right? And it's just some of the things. Anyway, just watch it. But in the very beginning, he gets this piece of yellow paper and he writes the word believe on it. And then he posts it in the locker room. And he says, I believe and believe, and I believe in hope, right? And so in that point in time, in 2020, in the height of the pandemic, right, it's exactly what I needed to kind of give me that sort of boost, right? But it's a great show, even if, you know, there weren't leadership lessons in it, I would say watch it. But lots of self-doubt. And if I'm being honest, you know, I think everybody has a different personality. And so different leaders respond to things differently. For myself personally, I don't know that I'm ever gonna feel like I flicked the switch and like, I got this, I'm never gonna doubt, because it's just not in my nature. But I also think that's what makes me a strong leader, is that I doubt and I question and I strive to be better, right? So yeah.
Yeah.
That's a trick question, but
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people feel doubt in themselves, no matter where they are or how qualified they may be sometimes.
I tell you, you know, I watch some people, and I'm an introvert. Maybe introverts and extroverts, they fall on a spectrum. So maybe I'm not like a severe introvert, but I'm definitely an introvert. And I watch people, and my husband, I always use my husband as an example, we're opposites. He's very much an extrovert. He will walk into a room and you can see not only him sort of like he gets taller and right. And when I interact with people, well, in the moment, I'm fine. It really drains me of energy. And so I actually need kind of alone time to kind of recharge. And that's really the definition of an introvert, right? It doesn't mean you're just shy. And so I totally lost my train of thought. What was your question about the self-doubt piece?
Yeah, I just mentioned how a lot of people feel self-doubt no matter how qualified they may be for the position.
Yeah. So what I was saying there is there's people that I watch that are extroverts, but also, and I don't know what it is about them, where they can make mistakes and they can be really terrible at something. You would never know. You guys have seen people like that, right? They walk into a room and they'll say with conviction all kinds of stuff. And maybe half of it's true, right? We've all been in meetings like that. Come on. And I think for myself, what I find myself doing, I think this is something that we all have to get better at, is I find myself qualifying things a lot when I'm not 100% positive. But like, are we ever really 100% positive about something anyway? Right? But it's that, I think it's that inherent, right? That personality thing. I'm like, if I'm not 100% positive, I'm not going to sit there on my fist on the table and be like, no, we have to do it this way because this is the truth, right? But again, I think when we talk about leadership, what's important is that you're an authentic. So when John left, what I had to do is tell myself, I'm not John, I'm never going to be John. So what is your thing, right? What are your strengths? And then figuring that out, and then kind of figuring out a way to sort of channel that into being a better leader, right? I think that's what's really, really important. Because if I try to sit there and figure out how I'm going to be that pound my fist on the desk leader, it's never going to happen. Not to mention, no one's going to buy it, right? They're going to be like, what happened to Sue today, right? Like, it's not going to work. So I think that's what it is. It's figuring out your superpower, right? And finding how you can leverage that, right? Yeah. Self-doubt's always going to be there.
Thank you very much. We're coming up 12 o'clock, so if Dr. Choi, if you can close us out.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Always enlightening to hear people's background stories about how hard work, perseverance, and dedication ends up in fruitful results. So I think your talk today was very inspirational to a lot of us. Hopefully, we'll get some good outcomes out of this, and we always invite you back to coming back and talking to us. And I really want to thank you. Also want to thank Ken Hayashida and his foundation for allowing us to put these